Hello there, good morning. It's Tuesday, it's the 10th of January, it's 9 o'clock in the morning, and it is the most typical British January morning. So in today's video, we're going to talk about a couple of things. One is how to stop your indoor hyacinths from flopping over. And number two, did you know that next Monday, the third Monday of the year, is known as Blue January because it's supposed to be the most depressing day of the year. And on days like this, when it's wall-to-wall grey, it's not even raining properly, it's just a little persistent drizzle. In fact, I don't quite know why I'm standing out here in the open, where I could be closer to you with a little bit of shelter under my pergola. But I do think those of us who enjoy working in nature and being in nature, whether you're a gardener or you're a flower arranger, that probably does help a little bit with our mental health, because we've got something that we can really get absorbed in, get really, really creative. So hello and good morning. I can see we've got Joan here, and I think I saw Linda's name there as well, possibly someone else. I didn't quite catch it in time. So hello there, I'm Julie. I'm the host of Julie Davis Flower Workshops and Flower Start, which are the online flower arranging classes. Now, I always start my videos off with that. And for those of you who don't know me or have never been to class with me before, might not understand what I mean by that. So as well as teaching flower arranging classes in real life, so I teach for Kent Adult Education, I teach for people who want me to come and host hen parties or groups of WIs, that kind of thing. I also teach online, so it's a virtual class, so I teach classes on Zoom. And I also have a pre-recorded email and video class which is called Flower Start, and the reason that's popped up into my mind today is I've just sent a reminder email. I think a lady has bought a class for a Christmas present, and I've just emailed her this morning to ask, is she ready to start the class? So the class is brilliant, lovely feedback, and the wonderful thing about it is, although I send the emails out to you at a regular point in time, there's no real life commitment. So if you think, actually I can't read Julie's email today, or I haven't got my materials together for that creative project that week, you can save all the emails up, and rather handily, the emails are numbered, so if you want to skip back and refresh yourself, you just need to find the email with the right number on it. So that is the advert over. Now, in my hand I have got some secateurs. So the other thing you need to think about today is, what do you do when your secateurs, or perhaps even your flower arranging scissors, get a little bit blunt and they don't cut so well? So the reason why I know that my secateurs are going to cut really well today is because my husband borrowed them. And when I got home last night, he announced that he thought my secateurs were a little bit dull. He was having trouble cutting with them. And rather kindly, he has cleaned them off for me. So if you find your secateurs and scissors aren't as sharp or doing the job they should be doing, it may well be because they are, not only is the blade dull, I don't think that was the problem here. I think it was more a case that they hadn't been cleaned. So it's good practice that when you're working with your flowers, whether they are flowers you're going to have in a vase or whatever you're doing in the garden, is to keep your equipment in tip-top condition. So what my husband did, he said he just wiped the blade down, and then he doused it in squirted WD-40, and then he announced that he'd let my secateurs drain in my compost bucket, and he just wanted to let me know that, in order that I didn't pile another load of junk in the compost bucket and find I was a couple of pairs of secateurs down. And I will say that now he's done that, I can feel that they've got a much better movement in them, and they will be easier to use. And the same thing applies with your floristry scissors. So it may well be, I can remember one of my ladies in class asking me this. She said, I just can't get my scissors open, Julie. I just can't cut with them. And again, that's a cleanliness thing. You'll find that in your scissors, that you can see here, these need clean a little bit. There's that sort of little blackness on the top blade there, which is the dirt and the debris that's got caught in your scissors. So you should, as a matter of course, wipe them down after every use. I mean, real life, who actually does that? But you will find that if you're using your scissors to snip off the top of those sachets of flour food, because it's not, on the whole, it's not powdery food, it's the glucosey syrupiness. You may well find that if you're opening lots of packets of flour food, that you're actually kind of gluing your scissors together. Doesn't that make such a satisfying noise? Joan, you're asking what's the best way to get them sharpened. Now, I would say, I don't think I've ever sharpened my scissors, but so I can't really advise you on that. There are people who you can take your scissors and knives to be sharpened with, like your local ironmonger, something like that. But if I was to ask my dad how to sharpen my scissors, if I said to him, Dad, my scissors are getting blunt, could you sharpen them for him? He would have used, is it called a soapstone? A stone. He used to have this little block. I don't know what it was made of. It was hard, the same size of a bar of soap, and he would sort of run the scissors or knives along that. Also, it's worth trying. Just this is just what you might think about. You remember as well, in the olden days, we used to sit down for your roast dinner on a Sunday. Did your dad ever do this with his carving knife? So you had the prongy fork and the carving knife, and then you had, was it called a steel? I'm not quite sure. I've got one in the kitchen cupboard. So ours had the same matching handle as the carving knife and fork, but it was a long piece of metal about the same length as a knife, but it was round and so like a rod, and it had grooves in it. And I can remember my dad with his knife in this hand and the steel, I think it's called, in the other, and he used to one side of the knife, the other side of the knife, and to sharpen the knife before he cut into and served the Sunday roast. So I guess you could try that. If you have one of those steels, that you could it's like a walk down memory lane, isn't it, Jane? And the other thing, talking about going down memory lane, we used to have picnics. I think perhaps, I don't know whether it was because money was tight because we were such a large family, or that it wasn't so prevalent that people went to cafes, perhaps they didn't have them. But in my childhood years, in the 70s and early 80s, my dad, we used to pack a picnic in a bag. Good morning, Lisa. And we would always take a bread knife with us. So we would buy a fresh loaf of bread and my dad would cut it up, and we would make sandwiches. And sometimes if that knife was blunt, he used to 100% totally embarrass us as children, because we would go to a park and there might be some steps in this park, and he would take his bread knife and he would sharpen it on the steps of the in the park, and that would give him a sharp knife to be cutting this fresh bread with. It's lovely, isn't it? Because that's the thing about memories. If you don't remember them and you don't talk about them, you forget them, don't you? So one little question will spark off a walk down memory lane. So honestly, Joan, I think the prime thing to do with your scissors is to keep them clean. And I think once you've cleaned off the gunk, your scissors will work much more effectively. Getting them sharpened, I don't know. See, in today's society, we think, oh, my scissors have got a little bit blunt, I'll go off and buy another pair of scissors. But perhaps that's not such a good thing. And now we're becoming more environmentally aware, the cost of living crisis. Perhaps we will start looking into how we can, repair what we've got. And I don't know whether you have this where you are, Joan. We have a repair cafe in town, and I think there's a whole nationwide chain of them, and the express point of these repair cafes is to repair things in order that things aren't immediately thrown away and put into landfill. So that might be, if you've got one locally, you can always search cafe and see whether anything comes up. I have taken things there in the past. I got my parents' old Kenwood chef, which I just couldn't get to work. It was user error in the end, but I took it down to the repair cafe and they showed me how to do it. I've had friends who have got necklaces repaired and things like that, so it's just little bits and pieces. Even, I think, runs into all sorts. So people have kind of lost the skills, haven't they, of doing, sewing buttons on, mending a zip, taking up a hem, and other things like that. So it's just quite interesting. We're trying to be more environmentally aware, to just make what we, use of hard-earned cash to pay for things, and then we could repair them as well, just to get that longevity, sort of put an end to that throwaway culture. because things aren't quite like that anymore. So shall we get on? Back on track with what's coming from the garden. Now, I don't know whether you can see, right at the end of our garden, we live in quite an ordinary house in the middle of a street in quite a pretty market town. And we've got quite a large garden for a town garden, and certainly if you live in a new build house, I suspect my garden is probably about 4 times the size that yours is. So we've got this quite big patio area here. We've got an area of green lawn, which my husband edged last week. We then got a sort of slightly wild bit at the back, which is where, when we first moved in 25 years ago, my husband planted some trees. Yeah, have a look, Joan. And I think there's a growing culture of repair cafes, but yes, I think they are concentrated in more urban areas. I think here there's loads in London, so we're quite unusual having a little one here. I would say I think their repair cafes are like a community driven kind of activity. So where I live, we have a very community orientated, so volunteer core group of volunteers, as everything in the world is, who put in their hard work and do the repairing. But yeah, worth looking out, and worth also even if you think you've got something that needs repairing and you can't repair it, that's when perhaps we need to be talking to our friends, our neighbours, our wider circle, and perhaps the older generation who've got these skills that us younger people have lost a little bit. And that might be a good way, mightn't it? Going to visit your old neighbour next door and just saying, can you help me with this? And then, Joan, you can walk down memory lane with your neighbour, and you may have, you're living together in the same town, and you've got some sort of group communal memories. It's a great thing. We need to talk more, don't we? And talk with our neighbours and learn from the older generation's lived experience and how we can use those skills in our own life too. So we've got lots of trees at the back. We've got some silver birch trees, and this is what I've pretended I've cut. My sort of strap line for this series on YouTube is that it's all from my garden. Well, quite often it isn't from my garden. And the reason I haven't cut these direct from my garden is that our silver birch trees are quite mature now. They're probably about the size of the house. So there's a white trunk, and it's got to the stage now where if I want to cut anything from the trees, because I want to use the branches, they're too high up. So I have to wait for a wind-stroke rainstorm, because the branches are quite not brittle, but they blow off quite easily in the wind. And if you ever come to class with me, you'll notice that I'm not always using silver birch, but quite often these silver birch branches will be a feature in what I'm doing. And I tend to say what you need to do is walk around your neighbourhood, spot the distinctive white trunk of the silver birch tree, and then next time you've got a windy, rainy day, if you look on the floor, you can collect all these branches. So these branches actually came from a world of information. Yes, thank you, Jane. I've learnt so much. Yes. And it's so nice, isn't it, getting to know each other online. So Joan and I have never met in public. And Lisa's here regularly. I do know Lisa in real life too, and Linda I'm getting to know as well. So it's all those things, isn't it, about stranger danger and being online. But actually, being online can be a really great way of building, a like-minded community around you. So yes, it is rather nice getting to know you from all different parts of the country and, of course, the world, because we have got viewers from America too. And I will say that, did you see on Instagram and in my Facebook group, I've just been at like a New Year refresh, and I've been looking at who watches my YouTube videos. So I was quite intrigued by the results. So more people in America watch my YouTube videos than they do here in the UK. Most of my viewers are women. I'm not surprised about that. But on YouTube, the age range of the women who watch is much younger than the age range I had imagined. And it's certainly different to the profile of the people that I've got in my Facebook group, which I would say in my Facebook group, it's probably 40 to 65, and YouTube seems to be a younger crowd of 28 to 35. So I didn't know whether that was because the people who follow me on Facebook are a slightly older generation and perhaps weren't so familiar with using YouTube. So if you've got a thought on that, do let me know. So I haven't cut these silver birch twigs from my garden. They've actually been cut from Alexandra's garden. So I don't know whether you know Alexandra Campbell. She has a very successful YouTube channel and blog which blew up. It was successful before the pandemic, but blew up in the pandemic when everybody was, of course, in lockdown and working from home. And her channel is called The Middle-Sized Garden. Now, bizarrely, Alexandra lives just over there in the same town as me, and we met at a creative networking group, and for a time she sort of mentored me in my business. So it's so interesting to see how her channel has grown and her blog has grown. She's absolutely an amazing woman. And I put a call out on Facebook a while back before Christmas saying, did anybody have any supplies for a door wreath workshop that I was running? And Alexandra said, yes, you can come and have some silver birch from my garden. So she's got these absolutely beautiful silver birch in her back garden. I don't know, hers are, and look at our silver birch. It's looking a bit, the trunk isn't looking clean and brilliant white. It sort of looks like a dirty colour. I wonder, it's just sort of got a bit of lichen growing on it, a bit of green tinge to it. And the trunks, because it's older, are starting to split, so they are browner. But I'm sure you probably do get different varieties of silver birch. So some maybe will be pristine white. Hers were definitely a smaller girth than ours. Ours are sort of this big and hers were this big. So it was quite nice to go into the garden of, internationally famous middle-sized garden and to collect these twigs from her garden. And this is what I'm going to be using today because my hyacinths are drooping. So do you have this problem too? I reckon everybody in the world that has spring, the hyacinth bulbs, everybody who brings them indoors for a little bit of colour at this dreary time of the year has exactly this problem. And do you know why your hyacinths are falling over? Answers on a postcard. Well, all I can imagine is, as you know, I'm no gardener, no botanist, but what happens is when you've got your bulbs indoors, it's warmer than it would be outdoors, and hence my belief is the flowers grow faster and they sort of explode and do their thing, and then you can see that the actual flower spikes, I would say, Joan, I don't think they have got hollow stems. It's more of a soft, sappy stem, and again, that may be it hasn't got the structural integrity, so I wouldn't say it was hollow. I would have gone for soft and sappy. But look at the size. I mean, we don't think of flowers being heavy, but I think that is part of the reason that they have this growth spurt. They'd grow sort of faster than they would do if they were naturally outdoors, and then the weight of the flower head, the stem can't support it, and that then is why it starts to bend and bow. And you may need to decide whether you're quite happy to go with your basket of organic, doing what they want to do, flowers, or whether you want to corral them a little bit and have them looking upright and perky. And this is the reason why indoor hyacinths aren't my favourite thing. I absolutely love them when they're at the green stage and it's that sort of sense of hope and renewal and they're about to burst into flower, sort of more like this when they're neat and petite, rather than getting a little bit unruly. So I have just broken, manhandled one of my stems off. I'll do something with that later. What I have done with my hyacinths, because I knew they would go floppy, I've tried to put them somewhere where they look contained and they look intentional. And I think that's the thing to do. Whatever you do with the plants you've got indoors, with the flowers, with the bulbs, whatever it is you've got living indoors, is to work with them intentionally and be confident with what you've done. So I knew these were going to flop. Yeah, so Linda agrees with me. It's the weight of the head that is causing that. The soft stem hasn't got the structural integrity to support the weight of the head. Yes, we agree. Even the flowers are nodding to say they agree. So what I did with my flowers is I've got them in this little basket. That's how they arrived. And I have got a fireplace in our front room, which we don't use. So I snuggled the basket of flowers into the grate. So I have the world's ugliest fireplace in my front room. I may well take a photograph and show you later, and I'll put it on the community tab pages. and also in the Facebook group as well. So if you want to join the Facebook group, I'll leave a link to that in the notes under this video. But so it sort of corralled everything. So, imagine I've got the tiles on my fireplace, and across the top got this black hole in the middle with the old-fashioned grate. Oh, the wind's getting up. And then I put my basket in, so the sort of fireplace sort of enveloped itself around the basket, and it kind of looked intentional. So Joan, mine are a little bit ahead of yours. So these were given to me as a gift. We had a little bit of a cheese and wine do, so that must have been the first week in December. So, and they've been on my kitchen window since. But the ones that I planted myself, which I think must have been 10 weeks before Christmas, the ones I showed you last week, so this isn't actually the hyacinth plate, but I can see close up that there's things sprouting. And the hyacinths I got on my kitchen windowsill in the pottery container, they're about this big with absolutely no evidence of the flower growth coming up. But that's the nice thing, isn't it? It's the expectation. It's this little reminder at this sort of dreary time of the year that spring is coming around the corner. Yes, we'll have to have a growth up, won't we, Jane, to see who comes first. And I suspect mine will come into flower first because I'm in the southeast of England and you are a few degrees north of that, aren't you, on the latitude. So can I get these to stand up? And the thing is, I might not actually want my hyacinth flowers to stand up, but I'll show you an option. If you feel that you want a little bit more security for your flowers, this is something you could think about. So the silver birch twigs. Now I was thinking, because we do have a tree with catkins on it, and I was part tempted to cut the catkins. Oh, you got yours in the conservatory. So you will take over then, Joan. You will speed ahead. Although I don't have a conservatory, I do mine on my sunny south-facing kitchen window. So yes, we'll just have to keep an eye. So I didn't use the catkins because the catkins are yellow, with the sort of the little droopy tassels, and I thought the yellow and the pink wouldn't quite go together. So I wanted something that was quite neutral in tone, and I'm cutting off myself a length of twig. I think I think that's broken off there, so I'm going to cut that down, and I'm going to sort of plant or push this twig into the growing medium. And I've got the option then of tying my hyacinths to the twigs or just getting them to be supported. I am thinking, if I'm doing this, I want it to look natural. And I don't really want to be tying my stems into place. I would rather that I had this sort of forest of twigs that I could support the flowers with. So it looked, looked natural, but it was a degree of support. So far, these twigs aren't doing a single thing, but I think that's because I need to add more in. So what I'm trying to do as well is I'm cutting the twigs, so I don't want to have any stub ends, so I'm cutting them so each of the ends is that fine little bit. I don't want to, for instance, put in that because it's too sharp and heavy, and in doing that, and perhaps these twigs are just a tiny bit too flimsy, but it's trial and error. This is just have a go, and I think it also makes this slightly more decorative as well. And if I'm lucky, perhaps these twigs might even sprout a little bit. Perhaps I'll get some leaf formation going. So I can hear the train going up to London behind me. I don't know whether you can pick up the fact there's a little bit of drizzle. But certainly the wind has got up a little bit. So did you see the video I posted yesterday? I know a couple of you have already, of my thrifting adventures in Birchington, which is quite a small, I'm tempted to say it's a seaside town, although it's a little bit inset from the sea. It's near Margate. So you may or may not know that Turner, the famous artist, I don't know whether he lived in Margate or he painted. The skies in Margate were supposed to be very conducive to his painting, but also Rossetti. So do you know Rossetti? I'm going to take this one out, it's too long. Founder of the pre-Raphaelite movement. So the artist that did the paintings of lots of ginger-haired women who had lots of hair and rather voluptuous. And I never knew that Rossetti was buried in the graveyard at Birchington. So that was quite an amazing fact. So I think probably this isn't marvellously successful, but I think if you wanted to support your stems, I would suggest you did this before you got too much growth coming through, so that you were creating a little forest of stems before you got there. But it does look quite pretty, but I just think these are a tiny bit too heavy. Now I wonder whether I can fake something up. So having said, yeah, it sounds like it's rainy and horrible everywhere. I'm going to go for one of my chunky twigs that I wasn't going to use. And I'm going to flick my stem up there. And if I can get that chunky stem really close to that flower head, oh, it's going to have to be a long chunky stem. Oh, it did a little bit. It needs to be longer than that. Longer than that. Let's go chunky and long. And then if it gets too noticeable, I will have to, I can just trim it. So I need to work out oh yes, that's a little more upright. So I could perhaps do the same for that one at the front as well. They're just to prop it up, but I don't want the fat stems to be the thing that your eye is drawn to. I still want that sort of, the beauty. Now that stem was perfect because it had a little bit of a fork to it, and that has lifted it up. Yeah, so yeah, you could use the garden canes, but if you've got to tie them all in, and then of course you've got to make sure you're not too heavy-handed, Joan. So I would say, on the research that I'm doing is works best with a forked stem, because then you can support the flower head through the fork in the stem. Yes, that is much better. I'm going to take that one out. That's not doing anything. It's not playing ball, that one. But anyway, I've got a success with that over the top. So I think I probably need to cut some more stems and specifically go for ones that have got that forked branch. So keep it nice and light and bright with the so that it doesn't look like you've got a load of firewood in your basket. And then when you've actually got the heads, I would try and support them if you knew you wanted to go for a more upright look before they have bloomed, got too heavy. But perhaps choose a heavier weight branch that's got a bit of a fork in it so you can rest your flower head in. Now, did you see the tiny stem that I knocked? I damaged it this morning when I got it out of the fireplace. But I found myself a tiny, tiny little bud vase. So this was from a gift pack of gins. My sister gave me the jar, and I think I've taken the little label off that said this is gin, and it had a little stopper. So these little containers are really handy for these casualties that you get with your spring flowering bulbs that tend to be on quite short stems and quite soft, so there is a sort of element of damage that's going to happen. So it's nice to be able to have that on my kitchen windowsill. And probably I'll be tucking these back into my fireplace, and they will be slightly more upright. So that is the look that I'm going for, is something that looks slightly more upright. So I am going to, before I go, next Monday, as we said, it is Blue Monday. What are you going to do? Do you get affected by the blues? Do you get the winter blues? Are you feeling a bit low after Christmas? And have you got a little plan as to how you're going to give yourself a little bit of a boost? So I'm always up for a few comments of how you get when your get up and go is gone. How do you get it back? But I do think for those of us who love being in our gardens and enjoy having cut flowers at home, they can bring a tremendous amount of joy. So my husband has come down for breakfast. A red stem, yes, red stemmed ace look great. Dogwood, the beautiful reds or the greens or the yellows, they would look really good as well. Or even it's I'm thinking like let me think, a pittosporum, like a small leaf pittosporum where the leaves have fallen off and you've just got those tangle of stems, a bit like a coral or something, but you know, in a plant, not under the water, and that might look quite good as well. So something that's got a bit more body to it, so that would be a good idea. So it's breakfast time. I'm going to have another cup of tea and I'm going to do my little bit of tidying up. I'm going to make sure, because now we're keeping care of our tools, that I'm going to clean off my secateurs just with you know, an old muslin, probably an old muslin, and then if I put them away in my designated spot marked, but it's not actually marked, but my tin of scissors and secateurs, I will know exactly where to find them next time. So I shall say goodbye. It's been so lovely spending this bit of a dreary Tuesday morning with you. I can even see I've got speckles on my glasses, so I'm going to have to clean this off. My hands are getting a little bit cold, so it'll be quite nice from having been outdoors in the elements to go and sit inside in the warm and smell the beautiful scent of my lovely spring indoor flowering hydrangeas. Ladies, thanks for joining me, and for those of you who are watching on catch up, well done for getting to the end of the video, and I'll see you again midday on Friday on Facebook, and 3 o'clock with a pre-recorded video on Monday here on YouTube, and actually next week I'm having my hair cut, so I'll probably delay the start of next week's video till about 11 o'clock in the morning, and I'll be looking all magnificently coiffured. Fingers crossed it's not raining. How disastrous would that be if you get your hair cut and then have it all raked out on you? So I shall say goodbye and see you next time.